Okay, in this example, I want to show you an application of two functions in particular, one being the small and one being the large function. So let's take a look at our data set. We have a data set that represents many of the Fortune 500 companies in the United States. We have the company name in column C. We have the CEO and the gender of the CEO in columns A and B respectively. Stock ticker information in column D, the industry that their company represents, whether or not the person listed as CEO was the founder, years as the company's CEO, years with the company, the age of the CEO, and their 2008 compensation in terms of millions of dollars. What we'd essentially like to do is summarize this data. In particular, we're familiar with basic functions like the min and if. But what if we would like to sum or take a percent or identify even the bottom 5 or the top 5 earners in terms of their 2008 compensation? Well, to achieve that, we actually need a function. Small to get information about the bottom, and large to get information about the, let's say, 5 highest earners. So in this sheet, I have a pre-built table. If we scroll down to the very bottom, we roughly have information of 500 companies. As I said, I think the actual number is somewhere in the neighborhood of 497. Let's just review some basic functions that we use to summarize data. Here in J501, let's go ahead and calculate the minimum salary listed in the table. Of course, this doesn't represent all CEOs around the world, but in terms of our data set, we'd like to know what the minimum is. So let's highlight the minimum range and hit enter, and we do have 0.06. So it might be more meaningful if we multiply this value in terms of $1 million. Let's go ahead and do that. Times 1 million. Okay, so now it's more in a form that is easily recognizable. We have the minimum compensation in 2008, and this data set was $60,000. Let's go ahead down to the next one. Mean. The mean, of course, is average in Excel. Let's go ahead and select the range. In this case, J2 through J498, ending parenthesis, and let's multiply that by 1 million. 1,000,000. Enter. It looks like the mean salary is $11.4 million. Let's take the median now. MEDIAN. The number we would like to take a median of is the range of CEO salary in 2008. And let's go ahead and keep a consistent format and multiply this by 1 million. So we'll have times 1 million. Now, if we know we're going to continually multiply every row by 1 million, of course we could either link this as a cell reference, or what I'm going to do is just copy this text and append it to every formula. So the median is roughly $5.3 million. The max, given this range, times 1 million, I'm just going to paste that reference in there, is $556.9 million. And we would like a sum. So we can say sum, the range, and then multiply that by $1 million. Okay, so rather large sum there. So these are all commonly used descriptive statistics that we have available to us. Again, in this data set, I want to highlight two functions, which would be the small and large. So what the small function actually does is find the smallest number in this range given some sort of index, and a 1 being the smallest. So this will be equal to the min. So let's go ahead and implement the small. So SMALL returns the kth smallest value in the data set, for example, the fifth smallest number. So if we reference small and then reference the range, we need to go back down to the formula. What we actually need is a comma k. Now, like I said, if you put comma 1, this would be actually equal to the smallest number in the data set, which would actually be equal to the 660,000 above here. So let's multiply this by 1,000,000 and hit enter. We do in fact get the smallest number in the data set, which is nice. Since we want to fill this formula down, we have to identify where we need our dollar signs. In this case, we need them around, at the very minimum, locking the rows of the J reference. So let's go ahead and do that. For filling down, we don't necessarily need to worry about this I-508 reference. So let's just go ahead and hit enter. We can fill this formula down, and it's going to select for us and display the 5 smallest numbers in the data set above. We could take a sum of those 5 and generate a percentage based on the total divided by the total of all salaries. So essentially the total of the bottom 5, what their compensation was, and a percentage, and I'm going to format this as a percentage, show more decimal places. It looks like 0.02% of the entire CEO information listed above. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with the top 5 money earners. And I should say this is with benefits as well. Let's go ahead and say large, and read the description here. Returns the kth largest value in the dataset, for example, the 5th largest. Okay, so if we reference our range, and we know we're going to fill down, so I'm just going to use my dollar signs, and at the very minimum, lock the rows, comma, reference to the 1, ending parenthesis. We see that the maximum would be equal to what we found above, this 556,000. So just to keep this consistent, I'm going to multiply by that $1 million value and fill this formula down. Total would be the sum of these top 5 earners, and the percentage would be of the top 5 earners divided by the entire sum in our table. And of course, this is just a percentage that we have values for, not all CEOs, just the information above. So it looks like the top 5%, or I should say the top 5 earners make 20% of the entire table. Now, of course, we can quickly generate additional statistics if we were interested. We could, in fact, want information from the following columns, let's say years as CEO, age, and whatnot. If you'd like to do so, we can extend this table, and at times percentages and things like that might not necessarily make a lot of sense, but since we programmed this in a way, what I'm going to do, or what I recommend, is actually filling this formula right and go ahead and take out the $1 million references. So I utilize my F2 key to get inside the cell, and I'm quickly deleting these million references till we're at the end. So we have all these formulas. Let's format them as a comma with no decimal place, and simply paste all these formulas over. You might also want to bring this column heading over. If that's true, we need to remove the dollar sign, hit enter, and simply fill this to the left. So now we have references to those column headings. So in terms of the age, the minimum CEO in our data set is 40 years of age. The max is 81. And in this case, total may not necessarily make sense. So maybe what you want to do is actually bring this total over here and remove these other totals. Just depends on what you want to do with your data set and how you want to summarize it, of course. I would actually recommend doing this for the percentages and totals everywhere that we calculate. Okay, so in a similar fashion, we can fill this formula to the right. We do in fact need to lock the rows, so let's modify the original formula just slightly by adding a $sign here. And I'm going to leave the $1 million reference there for just a second. Copy and paste that formula and go ahead and move that formula over and paste down. Let's format this as a comma and remove the decimal places. Once we have it at this portion, what we can actually do is fill the formula references left. Okay, and we can address, since we just have the headings here, we can just copy these headings and paste them in our tables below. It is an interesting fact here that we have 1, 1, and 1. So the smallest number in this case, yours' company CEO, is 1, and it does seem like 1 repeats, which is totally fine. So out of the bottom 5 CEOs, there are at least 5 with only 1 year. Okay, in a similar fashion, let's go ahead and correct this formula. We need to lock the reference of the 1. I'm going to hit enter, fill this down. Of course, you don't necessarily need that 1 million multiplication. I just thought it would look better. Let's fill this to the left, fix our formula, enter, fix the format, and now we're in a situation where we can fill down and fill to the left. And now we have quickly generated quite a lot of statistics here. And of course you could do any kind of format you want. I do see some inconsistencies. I would like this to be consistent, so I'll remove the fill here. And if you want the green format for your totals, you could use a format painter and bring this down. Or perhaps we want to be consistent and bring this fill up as the totals. And again, if it makes sense, we could actually quickly calculate the totals for these column headings as well, based on the min, median, and max, and the bottom 5 information and the top 5. So let's just quickly review. What I wanted to highlight in this particular video was how to use the small and large functions. In this case, we wanted to look up the bottom 5 CEOs in terms of their salary. So we could achieve that by using the small, referencing the data, and simply referencing which value we wanted. In terms of the small function, a 1 represents the minimum. If we're talking about a large, we could use the large function, reference the data, indicate that we want a 1, which would indicate or coincide with the maximum.